So now that the weather is becoming more and more of an issue in fantasy football, it is time to get the start-sit decisions right. This is the most requested video by far of you guys this week. It is crucial to get your start-sits right. In this video, I'll go over literally everything you need. So I've broken down every single matchup with sportsbooks odds based on the players and the game projections to give us an analytical edge, a weather update, which nobody does, even the best and worst cornerback matchups, as always, which you guys love, and so much more. As we get into it, if you guys appreciate the amount of analytical time and effort that goes in the video, hit the like and possibly even hit the subscribe button if you're new to join the rest of us as fantasy champions. With that, we come into this matchup on Thursday night with the Jets and the Patriots. You look at the projection on screen here. All the books have the Patriots winning by 13 points. It is insane. It's a 43-point total as well with the combined score, so it's not even that high scoring, and 90% of it is going to go to the Patriots. The Jets are not a good start. You see 4-mile-an-hour winds, a light chance of rain, around 40 degrees, not super cold, not unplayable. The weather really isn't going to be an issue here. It's more of the Jets offense. I mean, we have Justin Fields as a quarterback. We know Aaron Glenn is not even convinced himself that Justin Fields is the starter, so that might change by the time Thursday night rolls around. Breece Hall gets the most negative matchup out of all of these guys against the Patriots defense. They are very good in stopping points to the run. With that, they don't really have any wide receivers to take advantage of this matchup with. I mean, you have Arian Smith, the rookie, has not proven anything. A.D. Mitchell, who they just got on from the Colts, there's no guarantee he's going to get a full snap share this week. I do think he might be worth a stash at some point, but again, none of these guys can be started. I think Mason Taylor is going to get the main benefits of this matchup because when you have all of these really young wide receivers that haven't proven much, and you also have Breece Hall with a very tough matchup, all of the target volume is going to funnel through Breece and Taylor. You look at the Patriots here, it's a great matchup for everybody with how much scoring they're projected to do and how much of a blowout it is. It does help TreVeyon Henderson. If we don't have Ramondre healthy for this game, which he's trending towards not, Henderson can be a start again this week. We've known, Mike Vrabel has said literally today and yesterday that he wants to get TreVeyon Henderson more work. If that's actually going to happen when Ramondre is healthy, that's another situation. But if he's not, Henderson is a fine start. It's a decent middle-of-the-pack matchup for them. More negative for the wide receivers in Diggs and Matt Collins. Matt Collins was one of the top waiver wire adds this week. I do think he's serviceable if you need it, but definitely somebody I'm a little bit more worried about. But Hunter Henry is really where I think this offense is going to roll through this week. We have Austin Hooper out. If we know anything about Austin Hooper, he takes 50% of the snaps from him. He takes almost 50% of the routes. Hunter Henry didn't have a great game last week. This should be one where he can bounce back, possibly fall into the end zone for this team. We move it down to our first Sunday game of the week. This one's at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, being played in Madrid, closed dome roof stadium. So not that much of a worry for the weather, of course, but a worry for the matchup. The Commanders and the Dolphins, both very terrible defenses, both very up and down terrible offenses. Now that there's no Jaden Daniels, at least, you look at the over-under, it's decently high, mostly because these defenses are terrible. It should be a close game all the way through. You look at the Commanders, Marcus Mariota is barely averaging any passing attempts per game, so it's not going to be that positive for the wide receivers in Deebo Samuel, and without Terry McLaurin, it's Chris Moore, it's nobody. Like, none of these guys, Robbie Chosen, are going to be started, but Deebo Samuel is a must start this week against Minkah Fitzpatrick. You see the cornerback matchup here is very, very positive. That's a good thing because their slot corner is allowing a lot of fantasy points to the wide receivers. It looks like a negative matchup when the fantasy point number is put right next to it at 27th. That's not very high. The reason it's that low mostly is because the Dolphins, you don't need to pass on them to win games. Like, they're just so bad, you can run the ball and be fine. So they're really not that negative of a matchup. I'm not starting all these running backs for the Commanders, though, even given that fact that it's very positive. Again, you can see a top 10 matchup. JCM, Chris Rodriguez is questionable. If he's out, I think Corey Krosky merits a fine start. But if all three of these guys are healthy, we saw last week, it was quite literally the definition of a 3 running back committee. They all split evenly in snaps, goal line work, receptions, everything. It's ugly. It's disgusting. Zach Ertz has a very positive matchup. Again, we see the Dolphins are top 5 in fantasy points allowed to the tight ends. He can be started, but outside of him and Deebo Samuel, maybe Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, I'm not loving anybody else here. But you look at the Dolphins, even more positive matchups for them. I mean, the Commanders' defense can't stop anybody. Tua's a top 10 matchup. The wide receivers are a top 10 matchup. HN's a top 10 matchup. You're starting HN. Tua is honestly a fine guy to pick up on the waivers if you do need it. Again, just know it's always going to be risky, but they let him just air the ball out and see what happens last week against the Bills, and it actually kind of worked. So he can be a borderline started guy. We are starting Jalen Waddle. He's a fringe top 10 wide receiver with the matchup against Jonathan Jones. It is all positive here. Malik Washington is decent. I would not advise towards starting him, even if he does get the best matchup against Mike Sanders still, and the offenses are projected to score a decent amount, but he's just not consistent enough. If you look at his target share, that shows that. And we drop it down here to the Packers and the Giants. 6-mile-an-hour winds. There is a high chance of rain in this matchup, so it is a little bit worrisome for that. Not anything too crazy, except the pass game might be slightly affected if the rain does hold up. Again, we're recording this video very early in the week, but the Packers, they get a pretty positive matchup because the Giants are positive towards everything. You see this game, the Packers are projected to win by 7. They should be in a decent script. They have a decently high total as well. Jordan Love is a decent start. We know Josh Jacobs is a top running back. You look at the wide receivers and their matchups. We have Romeo Doubs against Flott. You have Christian Watson getting the better matchup of all the corners against Banks. And you have this man, Matthew Golden, questionable coming into this matchup. He gets drawn against Phillips. It's decent for all of them. Top 10 again against the Giants. It is a tougher one for Luke Musgrave. For some reason, the Giants, the way they run their defense, they just stop tight ends. So this isn't a spot where I'm loving to start him. But you look at the Giants down here at the bottom, Jameis Winston starting at quarterback for these guys, which is actually a positive thing. Wan'Dale Robinson is a must start because of that, even if he does have a more negative matchup against Bullard. But you see, Slayton has the more negative matchup out of everybody here. Slayton can be a borderline start, though. He's questionable coming into this week. But again, given the Giants are projected to lose this game and the fact that Jameis Winston throws 40 passing attempts a game, he's a start. Jackson Dart, if he does clear concussion protocol for whatever reason, that's good, but I don't think he will. Theo Johnson gives a positive matchup against his defense as well, so he can be started given the game script if you need it. You look at this next game, though, with the Texans and the Titans, dropping it down, 9-mile-an-hour winds, pretty decent. The Titans are home. I'm not trusting the win to be any type of problem. You guys shouldn't either. The Texans are expected to win this game healthily in a lower scoring projected game, though, so do not go start your fringe guys. When you look at the starts, though, Woody Marks is a must start in this matchup. I mean, it's a top 5 one. The Titans are allowing some of the most EPA per play, the most yards per rushing attempt. Woody Marks has solidified himself as the RB1, at least last week, getting 80% of the snaps and pretty much all the usage. Nick Chubb, even when Woody Marks went out for a couple plays, wasn't doing anything with it. Marks is a start. I'm not starting Chubb. We should leave him on the bench, even if it's a really good matchup here. Nico Collins gets a really good one against Amore Davis, a top 10 matchup. CJ Stroud, you can start. I really wouldn't trust it, though, because he's going to need to pass for a ton of touchdowns, which I don't think is going to happen. Dalton Schultz has been a consistent target guy. He gets a really tough matchup. The Titans aren't allowing a lot of fantasy points to tight ends there. You can start him if you need him, but not a top option. And looking at the Titans side of things, I mean, it's a whole lot of red. You're not usually starting many of these guys anyways, but this is not a matchup where I would take really any of them to start. Calvin Ridley is questionable, might come back and play. I don't care. DK, Io Manor, Ward, any of these running backs, it is all such a negative matchup. If you have the opportunity to sit them, you should. And we'll drop it down to the Panthers and the Falcons in this next matchup. The Falcons are at home. It's an indoor stadium. This total is decent. It's a little bit on the lower side, but the Falcons are projected to win this game by honestly not as much as they should. The Panthers here, you look at their matchup. The Falcons defense is very, very good internally. They're allowing a decent amount of points to running backs, though, which is good for Rico Dowdle. He's a smash start, even if this defense restricts points and yards to opposing offenses in total. We're not starting Young, but you look at Tech McMillan and Jalen Coker, it's a negative matchup. Again, we know AJ Terrell, this should be on the sheet. They're both really good corners. Tech McMillan is a fringe start, but again, the matchup is not positive, and we don't expect Bryce Young to be super pass heavy. You look at the Falcons, though, they should take advantage of this matchup against the Panthers. You see the wide receiver matchups down here at the bottom. It looks like it's negative, but that's really only because the Panthers don't need, again, like the Dolphins, you don't really need to pass on the Panthers to beat them. So it's not as bad as the fantasy point total does say. They are bottom 10 technically. JC Horn is a pretty good corner, something you should be worried about for Drake London, but it's Drake London. He's a top 5 wide receiver fringe. With his negative matchup, he's still top 10. Darnell Mooney gets a pretty tough one against Mike Jackson. We're not really starting him. He hasn't shown us any reason not to. Bijan is a start. I would not put Tyler Algier in this matchup. I know a lot of people have seen what he's been doing in the previous weeks. The Falcons are running a lot more 2 running back sets, which is allowing them to use Algier a lot more, but this looks like a Pitts game. With the target share that he's been getting and with the matchup here, top 10 against the Panthers, this can be a spot where we can go through and put him in our starting lineup confidently with the amount of offense we are projecting for the Falcons. We go down here and look at the Bears and the Vikings, another game in an indoor stadium. Shout out to the Vikings for building one of those. The weather matchup is not that important here, but you look at the over-under, it is one of the higher ones of the week. Again, another game projected to be pretty close. We don't have to worry about blowout potential, but the Bears side of things, the Vikings defense is really good. Caleb Williams, not a really strong start, but it is even worse for the rest of these guys. I mean, DeAndre Swift, Kyle Monangai, they've been splitting snaps. It's a bottom 10 matchup there against the Vikings defense, which I'm more worried about than the pass catchers, to be honest. DeAndre Swift can be started in this matchup. I would definitely sit Kyle Monangai. They are still splitting snaps, but DeAndre Swift, when healthy, is taking over everything. He's fully healthy, so that role is his. DJ Moore is questionable in this matchup. It looks like he will play, but Byron Murphy is not that positive. Isaiah Rodgers drawing against Rome Odunze is the harder one there. I would still start Rome Odunze in this matchup, again, considering the high point total, and it's considered to be close. Loveland does get the best matchup out of all of these guys, though. You see pretty much a top 10 matchup for the tight ends and fantasy points allowed by the Vikings defense. But we do have Cole Kmet healthy in this matchup, and every week that Cole Kmet is healthy for the near future, Colson Loveland should not be started in our lineups. It is just way too risky there. And you look down here at the Vikings, it is the complete opposite. Like, the Bears defense is allowing so many fantasy points to every position. JJ McCarthy can be started if you do need a quarterback, if you're in a 2 QB league. He's not a must start, but again, the matchup's positive. Aaron Jones has one of the best fantasy playoff schedules, but also rest of season. This is a really good one for him to be viable. We're starting him in all of our lineups. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, they get two very positive matchups against Deshaun Wright and Tariq Stevenson. And then we have TJ Hawkinson, who can be started at the tight end position, but really has not proven to do too much, even in positive matchups. We drop it down to the Chargers and the Jaguars. 3 mile an hour winds in this one, 76 degrees, beautiful. Jacksonville is home. It's in Florida. I wish I was there right now. The game total is relatively low, and I don't think the Chargers should only be -3. You see here, Herbert gets one of the best matchups of the week. The Jaguars are allowing a ton of points to quarterbacks. The running backs are another situation, though, and we do have Joe Alt out for the rest of the season. They have a ton of injuries on the offensive line, so it does hurt the running backs. I would sit Kamani Vidal. I don't expect him to have an amazing game if you have the opportunity to do so. Ladd McConkey, though, Quentin Johnson, and Allen, these are the three guys we want to talk about. The Jaguars are very positive in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. There's a lot of passing volume expected for Justin Herbert. He's a top 5 quarterback for me this week in the matchup, which therefore means we are starting these guys as well. Ladd McConkey is going to be our number 1 start. Quentin Johnston sneakily gets the best cornerback matchup against Greg Newsome, so he's a start for me, even if he's been boomer bust lately. Keenan Allen is also very positive matchup, can be in your starting lineup. And Oronde Gadsden, of course, if he was healthy, gets a beautiful matchup, top 3 against the Jaguars. He should be started in all leagues. If he's out, though, we are not starting Will Dissly. We are not starting Tyler Conklin, any of these other tight ends backing him up. They are not Oronde Gadsden, but the Jaguars, another situation. You look at all this red. The Chargers defense is very good. Trevor Lawrence gets a bottom 10 matchup. The wide receivers do. Travis Etienne can be started. I do like him in this matchup simply because I do think there's going to be a high volume of checkdowns thrown to him because Brian Thomas is coming into this matchup questionable. He gets a tough matchup against Dante Jackson, one of the toughest of the week, actually. Jacoby Myers, he's their slot wide receiver, so it's interesting to see what they're going to do with Parker Washington because he's been that for them. But still, they all scare me. I'm not starting Jacoby Myers. If, for whatever reason, Brian Thomas is out again, then we can change that opinion there. But still, guys, just ask me your start-sit questions in the comments. I will answer all of them, as many as I can. And Brenton Strange, if he is healthy, doesn't get that positive of a matchup. Dropping it down to the Buccaneers and the Bills. 8 mile an hour wind, 77% chance of rain here for the Bills at the home stadium. Luckily, it's only 44 degrees and it won't turn to snow. So this does affect the pass catchers. We dive into the numbers here. A very decent high projected game total at 48 points. The Bills are projected to win this game by a lot more than they should, considering what we witnessed with the Dolphins last week. But again, divisional matchups always go really weird. Baker Mayfield, though, gets the most negative matchup of all of these guys. The Bills are decent in stopping fantasy points to quarterbacks, but Bug Irving, if he does play, which he's trending towards not, is going to be positive. We have seen Rashad White and Sean Tucker split a lot of usage, though, in his replacement. So it does make Rashad White bump down the rankings a little bit to where I'm not 100% comfortable in starting him, even if the Bills defense, which the numbers don't look like it, but they are pretty positive in allowing fantasy points and just yards in general to opposing offenses. So with that, Egbuka is a must start. I mean, the matchup against Hairston isn't really that negative. You see the same thing with Chris Godwin if he's healthy, which he probably won't be. And then Tez Johnson is a fringe flex if you need it. Again, because the high projected game total. You look at Cade Otton. This one sucks because the Bills are actually good at stopping tight ends. They just have been for a while. I can't go ahead and delete this cornerback matchup here because that is not relevant right now. But Cade Otton can be started just because of the pass volume, again, especially if we don't have Chris Godwin healthy. The Bills, a lot more positive here. Josh Allen, James Cook, All of these guys can be started. Keon Coleman actually does get the more positive matchup here, but I don't love it. Jamel Dean, pretty positive corner, but not the most positive. I do think Khalil Shakir is going to be the safer start, even if he does get the tougher matchup against their slot corner, Jacob Parrish. And you look at Dawson Knox, he can be a fill-in guy for Dalton Kincaid, who's going to miss this week, but don't expect a crazy high target share going his way. We drop it down another one. This one's going to be crazy. The Bengals and the Steelers. You look at the weather, 11-mile-an-hour winds, 73% chance of rain, 54 degrees. The Steelers are home. You look at the game total, it's still pretty high, but the Steelers are projected to win this game by a decent amount, which I don't 100% agree with. You look at Joe Flacco coming into this matchup, his pass volume alone is absolutely insane, which is allowing all these wide receivers to be so positive. And you look at the fantasy points allowed, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, the Pittsburgh Steelers are allowing the #1 most points to opposing wide receivers so far this year. I mean, what more do you need to say? It's so positive. Chase Brown can still be started with the amount of checkdowns he's seeing, even if it is a more negative matchup. The Steelers are good at stopping running backs and yards per carry. But you look at Noah Fant, he also gets a positive one. I'm not as adverse to starting him. I don't think he's a must start, but these guys, again, you're starting all the top for the Bengals. The Steelers, though, is a different situation. Aaron Rodgers gets a top matchup. Again, this Bengals defense is very, very bad. We're not starting Aaron Rodgers unless you absolutely need it. It's a top matchup, but this team just does not pass enough, have the pass volume, and he just doesn't throw enough passing touchdowns to be viable. We look at Jaylen Warren. He is a must start in this matchup. I mean, you look at the fantasy points. Kenneth Gainwell, I wouldn't really advise towards. He's still seeing a marginally less amount of usage next to Jaylen Warren, and the coach has even said that he wants Jaylen Warren to get more usage. So even in a good matchup, unless you absolutely need it in a deep league, he can stay on the bench. Kenneth Gainwell, that is. You look at DK Metcalf. DJ Turner is a more positive matchup. Cam Taylor-Britt is positive as well, but this matchup is more positive than we've seen in previous weeks. And unfortunately, Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith do get very positive ones here. You see the matchup, but they're splitting snaps 3 ways with Darnell Washington as well. And they're not just splitting snaps, they're splitting routes. So it's all ugly. I don't want to start any of those tight ends, even given the matchup. Dropping it down to the 49ers and the Cardinals here. Another indoor game, so we don't have to worry about weather. The game total is about average for what we've seen and a pretty even spread for the matchup. It depends if we have Brock Purdy, Mac Jones at quarterback. It's a very negative one for them, not one where we'd really be going through and starting either one of them. Obviously, you're putting Christian McCaffrey in your lineup. It does not matter what the matchup is, but you have Ricky Pearsall, you have Juwan Jennings and Kendrick Bourne getting a literal neutral matchup against this defense. It doesn't look like Ricky Pearsall is going to play, so Juwan Jennings can be bumped up and started. Kendrick Bourne is their slot guy, so he's not a guy that I'm starting, even though we've talked about slot wide receivers being valuable in target share. He's averaging 2 targets a game since, I believe, week 6. Or not 2 targets, 2 receptions a game since week 6. And George Kittle can be started. Again, a neutral matchup for him. The Cardinals, though, do get a bit more positive ones. So you look at Trey Benson. He is questionable for coming into this matchup. Now, if he does, he probably won't be on a full snap count. So even given the matchup, I don't want to start any of these Cardinals running backs. It's way too risky, even if some of them do end up being fantasy viable. Bam Knight is taking the red zone work sometimes. You have Amari DeMarcado taking that last week. The receiving work, the touches, it's all disgusting. Now enter Trey Benson to the mix, who's probably going to be on a snap restriction. I don't like it. Trey Benson I would trade for, though, because he does have a really good fantasy playoff schedule and the rest of it there, but not one where we can trust it in this week. You look at Michael Wilson, though, the reason we don't have Marvin Harrison on this list is because he will be out for a couple weeks, making Michael Wilson the #1 wide receiver. So if he's not rostered in your league, please go pick him up. You can start him in this matchup. He has been somewhat viable in previous years. He is a taller wide receiver, so he gets a higher target share in those third downs and must-have-it moments. So he's a guy next to Trey McBride who's obviously going to be started. Greg Dortch is going to move into that slot wide receiver role, so he's going to get a higher target share because of that. But again, with the corner matchup, it's not really somebody I'm absolutely loving. Again, it's just another guy there. And Jacoby Brissett, not like he's a super positive quarterback and allowing and giving his wide receivers opportunities. You look at the Seahawks and the Rams, though, a lot of red, a very defensive focused matchup. Another indoor stadium at SoFi. The Rams are home. Decently high game total with a very even spread. But it's just, look at the defenses, guys. Sam Darnold, negative matchup. Charbonnet and Walker, I am sitting both of these running backs. The upside to risk ratio is just not something I'm worth risking here. Negative top 10, I guess bottom 10 matchup against this defense. JSN, always going to be started. The fact he put up over 20 fantasy points last week despite only running 11 routes, absolutely unheard of. Don't take anything from the Seahawks last week against what it was. They just did not pass a lot. They just didn't need to. JSN's a start. I do think Rashid Shaheed is going to be one of those guys to watch out for. Emmanuel Forbes is a positive matchup as far as corner goes. This is one where the Seahawks should be able to pass at a decent level, which should allow Rashid Shaheed in his second game here with the team to succeed. Cooper Kupp does take that slot wide receiver role, mostly against Quentin Lake, who is their most negative corner. I don't really love it. You can go through and look at A.J. Barner. If he's healthy, he will be a fringe tight end for you. And the Rams, Matthew Stafford has been on an absolute tear, so even given the very negative matchup against the Seahawks defense, who have been one of the best this year, he's still going to be started. You're starting Kyron Williams. The thing that the Rams do really good at is just being very top-heavy of an offense. They don't give the ball to a ton of guys, so it makes their starters really good. So again, Devontae Adams, if he's healthy, Puka Nacua is going to be a start. You look at the tight end, Tyler Higbee, good matchup, but not a guy that we do need to start. And now we have the Chiefs and the Broncos, another very defensive-heavy matchup. You look at all of this red, a somewhat lower game total. The projected spread is very, very close. 4-mile-an-hour wind, 6% chance of rain. The weather is not a concern here. The Broncos are going to be home. Patrick Mahomes is going to be a start, though, regardless of how negative the matchup is. I'm more worried for the running backs. We do have Isaiah Pacheco likely going to miss this game, making Kareem Hunt the RB1. So just on a pure volume perspective and maybe some receptions, he can be a flex. But again, this matchup is very tough, so I'm not risking starting those flex fringe guys. Rashee Rice, very negative matchup. Yes, we're not going to have Pat Surtain, so he gets a better one against McMillan. Still one where you can start Rashee Rice. Don't worry too much about the matchup there. It does hurt Hollywood Brown. Negative matchup here. The Broncos are not very positive in allowing wide receiver fantasy points. So Riley Moss is a very good corner. I would not be starting him. Xavier Worthy is also a very risky start in this one too with Travis Kelce. You look at the Broncos, Bo Nix hasn't had very many good games as of late. J.K. Dobbins is expected to miss this game, which makes R.J. Harvey a very, very good start here. You look at the Broncos here, Bo Nix has not really been very consistent so far this year. I wouldn't put him in the starting lineup this week against a very tough Chiefs defense. You look at the running backs, we do have J.K. Dobbins questionable for this matchup, probably going to miss, making R.J. Harvey have his first chance as the RB1. I'm not insanely for starting him. I think he's going to get a decent amount of usage in the receiving game and just be that dump-off target that they need, but he's not going to put up 20-plus fantasy points. He will be viable if you need it. Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin both get negative matchups. Franklin does get the more positive one against Trent McDuffie, so maybe there's an opportunity for him there. Evan Ingram, not going to be started. He was in our drop list for our waiver wire trap video. Go check that out if you haven't already. We go ahead and drop it down to the Ravens and the Browns. This one, very low game total, mostly because the Browns are not projected to score a lot. But you look at the weather here, 12-mile-an-hour winds, 42% chance of rain, kind of cold, but still, slight chance of snow if it gets cold enough. The Browns are home. This could very much make the pass game a little bit more washy. So you look at Lamar Jackson, very negative matchup for almost all of these Ravens guys because the Browns defense is good on their own. They're definitely tougher in stopping the run. You can see here they're bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed. But that doesn't really matter, especially when you look at this matchup and the weather here. They're going to have to lean on the run a little bit more. We're starting Derrick Henry. Keaton Mitchell should be stashed in your league if he hasn't already. Every single week he gets healthy, he's just getting more and more opportunities, and he's backing up, taking over that RB2 role. Still, you're not going to start him, but Derrick Henry's a start regardless of how negative the matchup is. Zay Flowers can be in your lineup. Rashad Bateman, I would not advise towards it. But still, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, they're splitting snaps at tight end. We liked Mark Andrews last week. I think this one will be an Isaiah Likely game, but not one where we really want to take too much of a risk because the game total is projected to be lower and the weather kind of sucks. You look at the Browns, though, the Ravens defense is very good in allowing fantasy points to everybody. So Dylan Gabriel, not going to be a start, but you look at Quinshon Judkins, a top 5 matchup for him. We're starting Quinshon Judkins. Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman. I would expect Cedric Tillman to be the higher targeted guy if he does get a full snap share because of the weather. These slot wide receivers run shorter routes, so it should be more positive for him. Njoku and Fannin could also get a benefit from that weather and having to throw shorter passes, but it's not like Dylan Gabriel's super positive of a high completion percentage quarterback. You look at the Lions and the Eagles here, 5-mile-an-hour winds projected with a little bit rain, but again, really negligible. We don't have to worry too much about that. The Eagles are home, a pretty high projected game total in a close one. We look at last week, the Eagles didn't do anything. Sam Laporta here gets the most negative matchup. The Eagles are not allowing a lot of fantasy points to tight ends. It is very positive for the running backs, though. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Gibbs is an instant start. Montgomery can be a flex for you, again, considering the high point total. Amon-Ra St. Brown's always going to be started. This is one where I would sit Jameson Williams, though. A pretty tough matchup against Quinyon Mitchell. We know that Amon-Ra St. Brown gets a tough one against Cooper DeJean, but still, Amon-Ra is going to be started with the target volume he sees. And you look at the Eagles side of things, this one looks like a lot of green. If this game stacks up to be as high scoring as it is, which the Eagles really haven't done a ton of, maybe A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith can be started. Devontae Smith does get the better matchup here against Rock Ya-Sin. It's better, but I'm still very worried about A.J. Brown in this one. Saquon Barkley gets a very negative matchup. The one thing the Lions are great at is stopping the run, but Saquon Barkley can still be started, and Dallas Goedert is going to be a touchdown or bust kind of guy in this matchup. We also have the Cowboys and the Raiders here. Indoor stadium, Raiders are home. We know one thing about the Cowboys is that their defense sucks, but kind of the Raiders too. You look at the matchup on the higher side of a projected total, so this is one where we can go through and start some of those flex fringe guys. Dak Prescott's going to be started, Javonte Williams. Both of these wide receivers in CeeDee Lamb and Pickens get top 5 matchups. Jake Ferguson does get a tough one. The Raiders don't allow a lot of fantasy points to that because of the way they run their defense. Jake Ferguson's target share has definitely been lower since CeeDee Lamb's come back as well. But with the market of the tight ends right now, he can still be started because who else is there really? You look at the Raiders, though. I mean, it's all green. The Cowboys are top 5 in pretty much every single wide receiver position, running back position, quarterback in allowing fantasy points. You look at the wide receiver specifically, Trey Tucker gets a great one against Kyer Elam. You look at Tyler Lockett, the slot wide receiver, he gets a great one as well. I mean, Dante Thornton, who gets a good one against Deron Bland. I wouldn't really be starting him, though, just because Brock Bowers is going to get the ball. How many passing attempts can Geno Smith really generate? There is a chance that he doesn't play in this game, which wouldn't really change too much. We're starting Ashton Genty. We're starting Tyler Lockett. In my opinion, this is a must start for Tyler Lockett. And you can also go through and get Trey Tucker in your matchup. But that is going to finish out this video, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you do appreciate the statistical analysis and all the time that goes into this video, please make sure to hit that like button for me. I'd love to see you guys in the comments as well. And I will see you in the next video coming soon. All glory to the man above.